And welcome back to Spinny Explains IT. What's up? I know you missed me. So this week I'm going to actually start doing something different. I'm going to start doing cyber tech news in the very beginning because that'll give me more things to talk about, and B, it's interesting to some people. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Okta's Data Breach. So this happened back in October. It was disclosed on October 20th. And so what this was a data breach that affected 134 people, which honestly, in the terms of data breach, that's pretty good. But if you're a company, one person being affected in a data breach is terrible. So not good in the end of the day. But out of 18,400 customers, we only have 134. It's all right. I'm not going to say it's the best thing in the world, but it's all right. So how the hackers were able to do this is that at first was disclosed they leveraged access to a stolen credential to access Okta's support case management. So it was very vague in the beginning, and you're going to see that a lot with data breaches. They're going to be very vague. They don't want to give out too much information because typically it's an ongoing investigation, internal investigation of what went down and what they need to do to patch whatever they got through with. So you'll see that sometimes, and sometimes you'll see in some of these data breaches, they'll tell you nothing at all because they don't want anybody to get any ideas of how one hacker did it so that they can try to go that same route, maybe go a different way at the very end to access some internal servers or whatever it may be. So that's one of the biggest things you'll see with data breaches. But with that being said, what had happened after more time has come out, it's come out recently that there was a service account, which is typically like a generic account that is used by, a team. They all know the same username and password. It says it was being abused by customer service support. And so the username and password of the service account had been saved to an employee's personal Google account, and that it had been breached that way. How didn't go into details, but they're saying that was most likely the avenue of how these attackers are able to gain these credentials. And so you'll see that a lot is generic accounts. They are very much a no-go. You don't want to have a lot of people have access to one account because it's harder to audit and track if something goes wrong. If you see, hey, this person with this attempted to sign into this internal, server, whatever, and you have no idea who it was because it's just a generic account and 20 people have access, it's not good. Not good as a cybersecurity professional. You want to make sure that each person has their own account so it's easier to track in cases like this. But they did figure out who it was in the end, so not too terrible. Anyways, what the hackers were able to do is they access what's called the HAR file, which contained session tokens. So what a session token is when you sign into a website, you're given a session token that'll expire in 2, 4, 8 hours, sometimes a week, a month, depending on the website. And that just means you don't have to re-sign in every time you access the page because the token is being used. And basically what these hackers were able to do is they were able to do what's called session hijacking, where they take your session key and they basically steal that and they put it on their browser and they can go in just using just your session token. So they were successful in attacking 5 different systems with this, or different other outside websites. So 3 of those were 1Password, BeyondTest, and Cloudflare. The most notable is going to be 1Password. That means an individual, their sessions were, they basically took that token session and hijacked it and were able to sign into 1Password. By doing so, that means they were able to take all of the passwords that were saved in there. Not good. This is basically the worst thing that could happen is having all of your passwords leaked on top of that. And so their solution, what Okta decided to do, was they blocked any session tokens that were inside of the HAR files and disabled the use of using personal Google accounts on Okta machines. Pretty smart way of going about it, kind of eliminate it where it started. And as well, if they're going to try to keep reusing those tokens, that you just automatically blacklist those that they can't be used. And then they did something which I thought was pretty cool. They did what's called session token binding based on network location. And this was only implemented, I believe, on admins. But basically, if an admin signed in on, the Okta's network, if they went home and signed in, it would detect that, this is a different network. You need to re-sign in. This is important because basically if these people, the hackers, were trying to take any of these tokens and sessions and try to sign in, well, they would notice, hey, you were signed in on our network, and now you're trying to sign on a different network, you need to re-sign in, and then their session tokens aren't going to work, not going to be valid. So in a lot of cases like this, the way it's detected and known, because 1Password was actually the one to disclose it in the beginning, saying, hey, we see suspicious activity. Typically, like with a bank, if you use a transaction in California and San Diego, and then 10 minutes later there's a transaction in New York, they're going to flag that because there's physically no way you could have traveled all the way to New York within an hour. Same case if someone signed in a location and then all of a sudden they send in a whole new location. 1Password saw this as a suspicious activity, wondering how did this happen, and so they flagged it and reported it. So that's usually a safety net for a lot of things. Anyway, so that's kind of it with the data breach. Pretty cool. But now I wanted to talk about kind of hackers and the different types of hackers there are. Actually get into my actual cybersecurity stuff. So we'll start with the hats. There are 3 hats. There are white hats, gray hats, and black hats. White hats are the good people, basically your pen testers who are given authorization to attempt to attack or hack into a network, and the company or whoever it is knows that they're supposed to be there. Gray hats are, actually let's go with black hats. Black hats are the people who are not authorized to be there, and they're attempting to get in and steal information, and they don't want to be detected at all, and they're in it for the money or selling of whatever personal information they get. So then we'll go into the gray hats. The gray hats, now they're in the middle. Basically what these people do is they're both good and bad. The reason why is they'll look at a website and they'll attempt to hack it, and if they do get through and they're able to get into the system, they'll then notify the company, say, hey, I was able to break into your system, here's what I did, this is how you should patch it, or you should patch it just to know you have a vulnerability. And so that's why they're good and bad. They're going for it. They're gaining access illegally, but then they're considered good because they're advising them after. Kind of a sketchy thing though, because a company has total legal prosecution to, sue you or whatever they want to do legally to go at you for getting into their system without their authorization. Not something I would recommend, but people do it and they're successful in it. So with that, now we're going to talk about 2 types of different kind of hacking here. There are elite hackers and then there are script kiddies. Elite hackers, they are good. They're very smart, very sophisticated people. They develop the tools that pen testers use, that any hacker use. They actually make the tools. So for example, on like a Kali Linux system, they're the ones who've developed all of those programs within it. So, Jack the Ripper to crack hashes and all that crazy stuff. Very smart people. I will never in a million years ever come close to that. The next are the opposite end of that spectrum. You're looking at script kiddies. Script kiddies are just people who are using those tools without really any knowledge of how they work, and they're just attacking things. One of the biggest things is like if they're setting up a denial of service attack or DDoS, and they're just basically using the tool and attacking someone. They have no sophistication in doing so. They're just utilizing the tool. And those, most of the time, they're not too big of a threat because they don't know, like let's say they actually got in or they took your system down. They don't really know what to do after that. They're just kind of messing around. But they still are dangerous because they could really hinder your work if they do a denial of service attack on your system. With that, then, the last 3 I'm going to talk about are groups, which are pretty interesting. So you have the hacktivists, so they're driven by cause. They're usually social change and stuff like that. The biggest, most notorious group is going to be anonymous. They are, people who will hack for, they say, the greater good, depending on what side you're on. I'll be in the middle. I'm not going to take a stance on it. And then you have what's called organized crime, kind of like the mob. I don't know. That was a crazy name they give them, the organized crime people. But those are people who are well-funded and highly sophisticated as well, and they're doing it for the money. So basically, it's a group of people who got a lot of money and get the best of the best and say, hey, I want you to get into the system. I want you to steal bank information, whatever you can get, and we'll pay you a big amount of money. And the last type of group is Advanced Persistent Threats, or APTs. These are interesting because they're usually funded by governments or national states is what other people say instead of saying governments. But basically a government says, hey, I want you guys to go and attack this system for some, political gain that they receive. The most infamous one of all those is going to be the Russian interference in the 2016 election. I'm not here to spread propaganda or whatever. That's a fact, okay? Don't yell at me. But that is a case in which they were funded by the government to attack another government for political gain. I don't know. Yeah. So that's really all I have. Pretty cool stuff, I guess, huh? So if you're looking into becoming a hacker, you should always go with the white hat approach. And if worst case scenario, be the gray hat. But that's all I have. So I'll see you all next week.